Now then, welcome back to another video. When people talk about the Lumix GH5, they're often talking about it in terms of its video capabilities because, you know, the GH line is the Lumix video line of cameras, whereas the G series of cameras are the more photocentric ones. Now, this doesn't mean for a second that the GH5 isn't a stellar photo camera, because it absolutely is, and I've used it a surprising amount, actually, for photography. And I think, if we're being realistic, for the majority of people, what the GH5 can do is way more than enough. Now, sure, it doesn't have all the fancy photo features that you'll get in something like the G9 or the Olympus EM1 Mark II, but it does have a lot of cool photo features. It has things like post-focus, it has things like the 6K photo mode, it has interval shooting, you know, focus stacking and bracketing. It's got a lot going on for stills. And when you compare the features of the GH5 to like any DSLR, which were designed for photography, you start to get a picture of just how capable the GH5 is across the board. And right now, at the time of recording, it is around the same price as something like the GX8 or the G9, between £400 and £500 on the used market. Now, recently I had a back and forth with my YouTube mate, Grant Robert Davies. If you don't know who Grant is, I've linked his channel in the description below. And he was talking about the GH5 as a street photography camera. And I've used it in this way before, but I thought, you know, this coincides nicely with the sun finally showing its face here in the UK. So why not? A lot of fun lines there, aren't there?
Lights at the worst possible place, in it? It's just
Silhouettes. Now, as I already mentioned, I've used the GH5 for photography quite a bit in the past, and so I already knew it was great for street photography, but one thing I think is worth mentioning is the size. The GH5 is not a small camera. Now, generally, people think of Micro Four Thirds and think of a smaller system, and while this is for the most part true, when you start getting into the more high-end models like the GH5 and the G9, all that goes out the window. For reference, here's the GH5 next to my Sony A7 and my Canon 5D Classic. Not a small camera. With that said though, I don't think it's by any means too big. It's a great feeling, solid camera, and has weather sealing, so you can continue to shoot confidently even when the weather takes a turn for the worst. Yeah, I'm just gonna get rid of this. Try this for a shot. Tattoo guy.
I'll be amazed if you can bring that out.
Prepare to be amazed. Now, I don't want to get into the numbers too much because the GH5 have got a lot going on and that would take forever, but I'll just give you the basics. It was released in March of 2017. It's got a 20 megapixel micro four third sensor. It's got fantastic stabilization. It's got great color. It's got great dynamic range if you expose properly. It's got decent enough ISO performance and access to all of those fantastic micro four thirds lenses. And as I mentioned in the last video, it has the dual sync stabilization thing with many of the Panasonic lenses, and that's just a bonkers level of stabilization. Now, it's got an absolute ton of features. Just have a look at the spec sheet on the internet. It's mad just how many video codecs this thing has got in it. And it's almost my favorite camera, if not for one thing, which Panasonic finally fixed with the G9 II. Now, with the release of the G9 II, Panasonic finally stepped away from the depth from defocus system and moved to phase detect. And it makes all of the difference. As I said in the last video, I shoot all my videos with the GH5. I'm shooting this one with it right now, but I always shoot manual focus. And I'm going to show you why. All right, so I've switched to continuous autofocus with face and eye detection turned on. We're still shooting in 4K 24p, and we're at about f4. Now, it actually looks like it's working as intended. I can see the box dancing on the thing, picking up my eyes. Let me see if I can show you that. So it's actually getting my eyes by the looks of it. It seems to be working. Did something change? Fine, you're my favorite camera, whatever. Right, so what would normally happen, or what I've seen happen in the past when I'm doing these talking head bits, you don't even have to really be moving anywhere, but it will just suddenly lose your face, jump to something else, do a weird pulsing thing, and then find you again. And then sometimes it just loses you entirely and just like does this mad hunting zoom thing. But today it seems to be working all right. A pain in the ass. Oh well. Now, I think the GH5 is probably one of the best hybrid cameras of the last decade, despite it having three successors in the GH5S, the GH5 II, and the GH6. As a camera, it's just got so much going on. It can do so much that I question what more could you possibly need from this. You know, if you're only doing this kind of thing, or even like indie filmmaking, this camera just does it all. Now, the GH5 spec sheet is actually bonkers. It's so big. There are so many things inside of this camera. I encourage you to go check it out. It's wild. So is the GH5 a good photography camera? Well, yeah, obviously, absolutely. And I've used it more than I expected I would. It's a fantastic camera. Now, this is the type of camera where for someone like me who's doing the video side of it quite frequently as well, this is the better camera to pick up in many cases because the video becomes a priority and I just want something good enough for the images. So I think, honestly, if I'd have bought this before I bought the EM1 Mark II, I don't think I would have bought the EM1 Mark II. Now, don't get me wrong, I love that camera. It's fantastic, but niche photography features aside, this camera does practically everything I needed to do. All right, I'd love to know your thoughts, so let me know what you think about the GH5. Do you use the GH5? Have you, sort of been looking at the GH5 as a potential buy? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to check out Grant's channel because it was our conversation that sped this whole video on. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.